Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lowdown as we take on our Monday series here. I'm super pumped. New month, new Monday, coming even at you guys with a little bit of a change in plans around the time that we're going live here. So if you're listening live with us, fantastic. If you're listening to a recording later on, awesome. Welcome to all of our Lowdown listeners. I'm really excited as we kick off a new month of April. We really spent all of March talking about and embracing Women's History Month, so we got an opportunity to go through all sorts of women's health and hormones, from PCOS, endometriosis, fibroids, PMS, PMDD, menstrual migraines, all of these different signs and symptoms that I personally see in my clinic all the time and help women work through, utilizing nutritional therapy, supplementation, lifestyle strategy, stress management, all of these foundational pieces of the puzzle that really go haywire and missing when women really try to kind of live in a man's world, right? And that's what we really got an opportunity to talk about in all of March. So if you missed our Women's History Month, you can go back under my Instagram reels and videos at any point in time and catch up on those. Otherwise, I'm excited because one of the other very common topics and umbrella areas that I help people work through on a daily basis in clinical practice is gut health issues. And gut health is one of those where if you got symptoms, you know it. And some people even are struggling with signs and symptoms of gut health, but they never really connected what they're feeling to having root cause ties and solutions to the gut. And so then they're out there spinning their wheels looking for different Band-Aid solutions or getting pitched different Band-Aid solutions. And then by the time they see me, they have tried a laundry list of different either testing, elimination diets, prescription medications, topical treatments, whatever it is to really resolve a problem that was housed inside the gut the whole time. And there's just not enough knowledge and not enough education out there for people to be able to discern what is going to be really the root cause resolution to a lot of these issues. And that's where I like to help people really look at their body from a holistic perspective and start to put some of the pieces of the puzzle together. So even when we talk about gut health, it's not going to be any different than any of the other types of things that we've talked about before, where we can't just look at the gut in a silo. Gut health issues are likely did not start in the gut, and they will not be solved by just looking at the gut. And so that's where people kind of really spend their time and wasted efforts by just throwing different Band-Aid remedies at the gut without zooming out and starting to look at and understand what influences the gut. Where do we want to really go back to the root of the root of the root to be able to solve these issues and make sure that we're reversing them for the long haul. So we're going to be taking April to really dive into different varying topics, signs and symptoms around gut health issues, and how we want to really think about and manage them differently when we're taking more of a root cause resolution. I'm very passionate about bringing and meshing together the worlds of a Western medicine approach and all of the new and innovative science that we have available to us, while also looping in a lot of our functional and alternative and integrative therapies, because I truly believe that a world of health exists in both realms. And that's where I think a lot of times, just like a gut health is very lost, because even functional solutions out there to me are either unnecessary, high expenses, and not really treating in the right order of operations. And then we have a traditional medicine out there that's full of different Band-Aid solutions and not really looking at the body as a holistic piece at all. So I feel like there's a lot of individuals floundering in the middle, really looking for some resources for success around gut health, and I like to take myself as a different approach. So as we start talking about gut health, I'm going to give you guys kind of my 2 cents on it and really dive into today this topic of food sensitivities. Food sensitivities is one of those that gets me super fired up because I think that there is, again, a huge misunderstanding of what these food sensitivities might mean. How do we identify them? How do they differ from a food allergy? And what are they trying to tell us really about the overall state of our metabolic health and our hormonal health? So we're going to really dive into this conversation conversation today as we talk about food sensitivities. So when we think really even just about gut health in general, gut health, like I said, is probably one of the chief complaint symptoms that I hear and see in practice. A lot of individuals know that they have gut health issues, whether that is things like food sensitivities is a symptom of gut health issues, bloating, constipation, diarrhea. Maybe they know they have an IBS type diagnosis. Maybe they have chronic acid reflux. All of those types of things are usually some of those I know that I have gut health issues, and it seeks them out looking for a gut health practitioner. But what about all of the other signs and symptoms that we have gut health issues that don't really give digestive type issues? So we have to think about even skin issues, acne, eczema, psoriasis, dry skin. Definitely talking about a gut issue here, whether it's a microbiome issue and dysbiosis, or whether there's an overgrowth issue, we're having malabsorption issues of key fat soluble vitamins. All of that is going to go into skin and how we really present. That's the first thing you want to look at is let's take a deep dive into the gut. Again, things like acid reflux, that is definitely a sign of gut health issues. I know sometimes people associate that, but other people think of like gut as just like pooping problems, and your gut health is not just pooping problems. It goes all the way from the brain to through the elimination pathways. It's not just the lower gut. So acid reflux is a sign of chronic gut issues. Thyroid disease, that is a big one. Always got to go back to looking at the gut and the liver and the gallbladder when we think about someone that's dealing with known thyroid disease or dysfunction. And then finally, autoimmune disease. This is one that we're going to be diving into a lot more because I have a big passion for this autoimmune umbrella. It's becoming more and more common too. Most of our autoimmune disease is actually found in women. 70 to 80% of autoimmune disease diagnoses are women. And 70% of your immune system is found in your gut. So we can't be treating autoimmune conditions without treating the gut. So that's where I want to really loop in together and make sure that people understand that diagnosis is like a Hashimoto's, a fibromyalgia, a Graves, a celiac disease, even like an endometriosis, a rheumatoid arthritis, like all of these things that fall under that autoimmune umbrella, they all have common ties back to the gut. So I want to continue to bring light to these topics and really put them at the forefront because so many people are having these types of issues. They're being told that their symptoms are either all in their head, they're being told their labs are normal, and they're suffering without really being presented all of the treatment options, or they're being treated with more like Band-Aid symptom relief. Here, just get rid of the symptom, but then they don't recognize and realize that 3, 5, 10 years down the road, they're just dealing with more and more issues because the original problem was never truly dealt with. So most individuals that do get diagnosed with one autoimmune disease go on to develop another. Same thing that we'll learn about today. Most of the time, individuals that find that they have one food sensitivity go on to develop other food sensitivities because they don't fix the problem. They just think that, oh, I have a food sensitivity, I can just take it out of my diet and it's all fixed. It's like, no. Like a food sensitivity, sure, a temporary elimination diet might be part of the treatment, but we have to look and ask why. Why do you have this food sensitivity? Because if we don't deal with that, the symptoms are going to keep progressing and the disease state itself continues to progress. You can't just slap a Band-Aid solution like an elimination diet on top of it and pretend that like that fixes the problem, right? Even someone with a celiac disease, knowing that we probably need to really hone in on a gluten-free diet, it doesn't stop there. Autoimmune disease is still progressing even in a gluten-free state, right? So it's a bigger picture. It's not just taking the food out and going about our merry way. That is not a root cause solution. We got to look deeper, right? So when it comes to the root cause healing of the gut, there's nothing more misunderstood than food sensitivities. And I think that that's why it fires me up so much, because a lot of individuals will come to me and they're like, should I get a food sensitivity test? And I'm like, absolutely not. Because if the state of your gut is in chronic inflammation or we have some adrenal issues, you're going to light any food sensitivity test up like a Christmas tree, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily sensitive or need to eliminate all of those foods. It's just telling you that you have a really angry gut and we need to really ask why. And it's not just one of those situations we want to just take everything out. It's going to cause more issues, which we'll talk about as well too. So let's put some background knowledge out here. What are food sensitivities? I want to differentiate between a food sensitivity and a food allergy. Very different responses here. That way we all are on the same page. A food allergy is what we call an IgE, mediated response, meaning our immune system secretes antibodies, IgE. I always remember that because IgE stands for emergency, right? So a food allergy is going to give us like life-threatening type of reactions, whether that's an anaphylactic response, swelling of the tongue and the throat, like we're getting an overt allergy to a food. That is very different than a food sensitivity because an IgE response is immediate, right? It is very short, like we know right away that there is an IgE or a food allergy response, versus a food sensitivity is more of an IgA or an IgG immune mediated response. So that could take upwards of 3 to 4 days for us to actually feel symptoms, which is why a lot of times food sensitivities are a little bit more vague, because a lot of people are out there, they know they have gut issues, and here they are, they're trying to finagle their diet, and when they have symptoms or they have a flare, they're going back and they're like, oh, it must have been the eggs that I ate, or I must have had a gluten exposure somewhere, oh it must have been that dairy that I ate. And normally they never find a pattern, and it just throws us into more and more of an anxious spiral because we continue to blame certain foods for our symptoms instead of recognizing the fact that it's like, no, the food sensitivities are really just a sign. They're a symptom that your body is trying to communicate with you. Things are not good in here. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of inflammation, and I don't really care what you eat. I don't like it. So we can't just keep living in that perpetual cycle of trying to associate food with our symptom flare. We have to think bigger. I'm not saying that a purposeful elimination diet to remove some of the more sensitive triggers for certain people isn't warranted, but it should always come with a timestamp. It's like, okay, are we taking this out, and why are we taking this out, and what is the timestamp? What are we doing in the interim then to fix the issue and potentially create an environment where we can reintroduce that food? That is right there where I think both traditional and functional medicine miss the mark, because traditional medicine doesn't really recognize food sensitivities. They recognize more of a food allergy, like an IgE mediated response. I need to give you an EpiPen to deal with this type of thing. And the functional medicine world definitely recognizes the role of food sensitivities, but they don't treat them the right way. They give everybody a food sensitivity test. They tell you that anything that you light up on there, you need to eliminate it, and then they send you on your merry way. It's like, where's the conversation around, like, what is the protocol here? If I'm gonna take a food sensitivity test, which to me is just a waste of money, is you're better off doing a more concerted elimination diet, like testing out what feels best for you and doing it one food at a time, not wiping out your entire diet, because then, like, what do you eat? You just feel incredibly anxious around all foods. So the functional medicine tends to go a little too overboard, where they run these tests, everything lights up like a Christmas tree because your gut is a mess. They tell you to eliminate all of it, and they send you on your way, mostly with some other supplements. And it's like, the middle ground here is recognizing that food sensitivities do exist, but they're not necessarily a root cause resolution. That is not fixing the issue. We need to recognize that food sensitivities are simply just a symptom of bigger issues going on. So we need to take that as just one symptom checklist. Just like we think about fatigue or dry skin or poor sleep, it's like food sensitivities are really just a symptom. So we're going to make sure that we recognize that, and it's like, okay, we know that we have some work to do on the gut. How are we really taking the body back into a holistic mode and looking at why the gut is an issue in the first place? And we're going to be putting in some specific interventions and strategies to truly heal the gut so that it is more tolerant of all foods, right? So I am very much, like I said, an advocate of knowing the difference between like an IgE, emergency food allergy type response, versus an IgA or an IgG food sensitivity type of response, and recognizing too that those two things are not the same as a food that just straight up doesn't make you feel good. So that's where we also need to just put a quick little like asterisk caveat here. What I'm talking about when it comes to food sensitivities is individuals struggling to digest and absorb and tolerate seemingly healthy foods. That's really the realm that I'm talking about. Things that are close to nature, things that our body should not be having an overt response to. I am not talking about the fact of the foods that, let's be real, none of us should really be consuming a high amount of, like processed foods, fast foods, artificial sweeteners, foods in like bags, boxes, barcodes with long shelf lives and tons of preservatives. It's like nobody feels good when they eat Little Debbie snacks. It does not mean that you have a food sensitivity to gluten just because you don't feel good eating Little Debbie snacks. It's like, yeah, sure, like Little Debbie snacks absolutely have gluten in them. They're made from wheat and white flour, but that's not the reason why they don't feel great when you consume them, right? So I'm not talking about like kind of more of the processed or kind of the trash foods out there. Nobody feels good when they eat those. I'm talking about individuals that are really in a point where they are associating seemingly healthy foods to symptom flares. And they are out there eliminating a lot of very nutrient dense foods. They're eliminating things like eggs. They're eliminating even things like unprocessed soy. They're eliminating things like meat. Yes, there's people out there where they go vegan or vegetarian because they don't feel good when they eat meat. I'm like, that's a problem. We need to ask, why do you not feel good when you eat meat? It's not that you have like a sensitivity to it, right? So like I said, eggs, unprocessed soy, meat sources, even things like unprocessed and unadulterated dairy, right? So we have these individuals out there that it's like nuts and seeds. That's another one, right? It's like, look at our schools. We have these poor kids out there where it used to be super rare that we had food sensitivities or food allergies. And now we're seeing so many kids where it's like, this is a nut-free classroom. This is a tree nut, a peanut, an egg, a soy-free like class or gluten-free, dairy-free classroom. I'm like, oh my goodness, like these kids should not have those types of allergy or sensitivity type responses at this stage of the game. Like we really need to be honing and really nurturing our gut from a young age all the way into adulthood. So when we look at this, it's really not the food. That's what we're learning, right? When I talk about the things that to me should be able to be tolerated and part of a well-rounded and balanced diet. And if we're not able to tolerate those foods, I need to really ask why. Instead of just continuing to eliminate things, that's not going to solve anybody's issues. And in fact, I just made an Instagram post about it last week in preparation for this conversation, is that I see a lot of times where these well-intentioned elimination type diets actually cause more issues than not, because they lead to lack of microbiome diversity. Like the smaller your food diversity, and if all of a sudden you only feel like you have the same 5 safe foods on repeat, now all of a sudden your microbiome becomes less diverse, and a less diverse microbiome is what starts to lead to immune issues or autoimmune issues and downstream. So these elimination diets can really wipe out beneficial gut bacteria. They can wipe out your prebiotics. They can wipe out and eliminate your probiotic intake. They can really knock out just microbiome diversity in general. They cause a lot of anxiety for people inside and outside the home, not knowing what to eat, when to eat. Like, that's not a safe food. I can't eat that. They can't eat at social situations. And as we'll learn, digestion and the gut, it starts in the brain. Everything starts in the brain. Your gut and your brain are actually the same fetal tissue, and they end up splitting. So we can't discount the fact that even in utero, our brain and our gut are very much interconnected, and they stay that way throughout the entirety of our life. So that's why we start to like have those terms like, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach, right? It's like we can already see multiple different times in our day-to-day where anxious energy makes us feel sick to our stomach or nauseous, right? It kind of contributes to loss of appetite. It can even have some people like you get the nervous poops. I mean, everybody has a different kind of connection of the brain to the gut there. So we have to recognize that we can't be following these strict elimination diets or really any diet that's causing us more anxiety, because that's not healthy in any aspect. So can't have restriction. We can't have, like I said, these elimination diets really causing more wear and tear than benefit for us. So going back to really that conversation of, we have food sensitivities, we have food allergies. We can recognize that both exist. We can also recognize the middle ground where, like I said, processed food sources aren't going to feel great for everybody, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a food sensitivity. It just means that we have a quality of food issue here. And we have a lot of individuals out there that are struggling with chronic gut issues, and in the functional world, they have been told to eliminate perfectly healthy foods without a conversation on, okay, am I eliminating these for a short amount of time? What are we going to be doing and implementing in the meantime? And what is the plan to reintroduce these foods? Because we should be able to tolerate nuts and seeds. We should be able to tolerate meat. We should be able to tolerate eggs. We should be able to tolerate certain amounts of dairy and things like that, right? So I always want to make sure that this is customized and personalized for each person, but I also want to make sure that everybody understands that it's not the food. I'm not saying that our food supply, like I said, hasn't changed. That's why I'm throwing like the processed food sources in a different category, because that's not really what I'm talking about. I fully understand that those have changed and nobody feels good eating those. That doesn't mean you have a food sensitivity to them. It just means that they're kind of lack of nutrient value altogether. I'm talking about more of the whole food sources of nature that we have really just stopped being able to digest and absorb. And on a food sensitivity test that we pay hundreds of dollars for to tell us that these perfectly healthy foods, for some reason we shouldn't be eating them. And we're not talking about the real reason why. That's where I tend to get fired up about it. So it is not about the food. It is about your gut. We can come to the table and understand there's certain foods that don't make me feel great and really customize this on a personalized basis. Absolutely. Does it mean that I don't talk about certain elimination diets for certain individuals in my practice? 100% I do, because it's a lever that's going to make them feel better. Like right now. But we always have a conversation. It's like, this is not a forever tool. This is something that I want you to use right now while we spend the next 30, 60, 90, 120 days addressing the underlying reason why and putting your gut into a more resilient place so that you don't have these issues as a lifelong thing and you can have exposures to these foods and feel just fine. You want to build that gut resiliency back up. So some things that I want to kind of round out and talk about to finish out this conversation around food sensitivities and get us started on this gut health month, because this will lead us into a lot of our additional conversations is, okay, so if it's not about the food and it's about my gut, what might be some of the underlying root cause reasons why my gut isn't resilient to some of these perfectly healthy foods? Great question. I'm so glad that you asked. I would say some of the most common root cause real resolutions to these food sensitivities is going to be really addressing some of the digestive distress that's going on. So it could be things like low stomach acid. That is a very common one, especially if an individual has had any history in following a low protein diet. Use it or lose it. Also, chronic stress can really exacerbate improper stomach acid release or improper stomach acid production. So addressing things like stomach acid, addressing things like bile salts or bile acid production. This also gets us looking into conversations around how optimal is someone's gallbladder functioning. The gallbladder is something that we just forget about. We want to throw it away. We think it's just causing issues. Just yank that bad boy out. And it's like, no, the gallbladder is so important for digesting and emulsifying foods, especially our fats and our fat-soluble vitamins. So we see lots of issues, like I said, micronutrient deficiencies, malabsorption of fats with individuals that do have either some gallbladder issues or they're missing a gallbladder, or we kind of develop what we call like a gallbladder sludge. And that is a result of chronic blood sugar imbalances, estrogen dominance issues, things like that, right? So you're starting to hear me talk about, you're like, oh dang, she's not talking about just the gut. Like, these are outside issues that are influencing the gut. And if we don't address these, we're never getting anywhere. It's like, yes, that's what I'm getting at, is thinking bigger picture and supporting the body as a whole. So yes, there's going to be some digestive components of, like I said, stomach acid production, bile acid, gallbladder activity, or honestly, just even what I call weak digestive function. Our gut is a muscle. We have to work it. So I have seen individuals that have done, like I said, more liquid-based diets, more juice cleanses, or they tend to drink most of their calories versus eat them. Your body's just like, okay, whoosh, that food just like passes right through, versus like making your stomach work. There is mechanical digestion happening here. And let's be real, a lot of us just eat while multitasking, and we eat in a hurry, and we eat on the go, so we don't chew our food very well. So all of those things can really promote like a weak digestive capacity that I help people work through as well too. Chronic fight or flight. That's probably going to be the most common one, is individuals that are stuck in this nervous system fight or flight mode from chronic cortisol, dysregulated circadian rhythm patterns that will wreak havoc on your gut. And more times than not, I've seen individuals that have spent thousands and thousands of dollars in different practitioners and testing, and they come to me and I'm like, this is where we're starting. And they're like, really? That's not even in my gut. I'm like, I'm fully aware. And that's what ends up moving the needle. And that's ends up what gives them that really root cause resolution, because nobody had talked to them about nervous system, circadian rhythm, cortisol, adrenal health. Low thyroid function can also contribute. Not only can the gut contribute to low thyroid function, but low thyroid function can contribute to gut dysfunction. And also, like I said, to food anxiety and food fear. So a lot of times I see individuals that have kind of, with good intentions, really went down this path of trying to find some root cause resolutions, utilizing things like elimination diets or supplemental protocols, and they just end up honestly with more anxiety and, like I said, a smaller tolerance list of foods. And that right there is why they're stuck. They've done the initial part of the protocol, which is a really aggressive elimination, but nobody has walked them through like truly healing their gut and healing their relationship with food, and starting to get them to recognize that they can, with the proper order of operations, see these foods as things that are not dangerous. They're not foods that are going to directly cause flares, and working through some of those food anxieties and food fears is a very real thing to bring gut healing for individuals as well too. So just recognize that your elimination diets, while like I said, some people want to think of them as like, oh, that's why I'm having all my problems, is I just need to eliminate gluten. I'm like, nope, that's not why. I'm not saying that might not be part of the conversation, but that is not a root cause. That is just a symptom, right? So don't get misconstrued or duped by an elimination diet being the end of your road or the end of your work. That is really honestly just the beginning, if it's even necessary at all. Because like I said, that's why I see so many individuals that end up with one food sensitivity, and then it leads to another, and then it leads to another. And it's like, that's because you never addressed it. Someone just told you could eliminate gluten and go about your merry way. And it's like, then it was dairy, and now it's this, and now I have this problem. And it's because you never really stopped the disease progression from taking place. So that's what I'm all about, is get back to the root, stop the disease progression from taking place, utilize all of our strategies, whether, like I said, it's traditional and Western medicine approaches, it can be functional medicine approaches, but we're meeting in the middle and really zooming out and understanding what is that person's particular issue or picture of gut dysfunction, and not just food eliminations. That's not going to get us very far. So hopefully this conversation was helpful for you. If you enjoy this, you can jump over to a lot of my courses that are available on Renew University. I have a couple freebie courses and webinars on there, as far as also some paid courses. I have my Renew Your Gut Health course on there, as well as a Gut Check Your Gut Health webinar. So if you want to learn some more before we get too much into the weeds with our Monday talk, you can always pop over to the courses.renewuniversity.com and check out some of my additional resources there. I'll be sure to link them below in this video as well. So stay tuned for next week, because we're going to be coming back for more of these gut health conversations, specifically diving into things like autoimmunity, and really talking about thyroid and how all of it will play together. So enjoy the rest of your week and be back for more next week.